Okay. Good afternoon. I would like to call to order the January 8th, 2025 school committee meeting. This is a regular school committee meeting. It is now 6 o'clock. At this time, I'll entertain a motion to convene in executive session. This is a non-public session to discuss the approval of executive session minutes, collective bargaining pertaining to secretaries and the TTA bargaining units. And if we do have a motion on the table, the school committee will reconvene in open session after executive session.
So moved.
I'll second it.
Okay, a motion by Mrs. Biagioni-Smith, second by Mr. Russo. Mr. Moncada, how do you vote?
Aye.
Mrs. Anderson?
Aye.
Mr. Russo?
Aye.
Mrs. Biagioni-Smith?
Aye.
And I vote aye as well. And so at 6:01, we now we'll step out, enter into executive session, and return for 6:30 in open session. Okay, welcome back. We now reconvene our regular school committee meeting at 6:41. Thank you for your patience. My apologies, it took us a moment to get back. If we could all rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, our announcement. Tonight's regular school committee meeting will be televised and recorded, may be viewed live on Comcast Channel 22 and Verizon Channel 34, or on youtube.com/Tewksbury TV. Under the open meeting law, the public is permitted to make an audio or video recording of an open session at a public meeting. At this time, I would ask if anybody is recording tonight's meeting to please identify themselves. And seeing nobody, I will now entertain a motion to please take out of order item 8A and 8C, which is the out-of-state field trips respectively, the baseball field trip and the drama field trips.
So moved.
I'll second that.
Okay, motion by Mrs. Beatrice Smith, second by Mr. Russo. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Okay, passes unanimously. So I'd like to start with Mr. Druin.
Thank you, Madam Chair. We do have a couple of recognitions tonight. This one a little bit different than typical. Athletic Director Ron Druin wants to share a different type of win for our boys' baseball team, as well as seek your permission and approval for an out-of-state field trip.
Yes. Hope everybody's holiday was good.
Yeah, thank you.
Awesome. Thank you for having me. Our baseball team put in for the lottery at Cooperstown at the Baseball Hall of Fame. They were lucky enough to be granted a permit and an opportunity to play on Doubleday Field. It is a league game versus Methuen, so they'll be traveling with Methuen High School. They're going to go down on, they have the opportunity to go down on Friday, the Friday of April vacation, drive down in the morning, visit the Hall of Fame in the afternoon, have dinner at night. They have an early permit, I want to say 10 o'clock Saturday morning or 11 o'clock Saturday morning on Doubleday Field. They would play and come back. No school would be missed. The chaperones for the trip would be the coaching staff. The parents would obviously have the opportunity to go, but the team would stay with the team and the coaches are the chaperones. They're working out athletic trainer coverage between Tewksbury and Methuen. I know our trainer, Chris Mahana, is going to have a 1-month-old at that point, so he's probably not going to be the trainer on that trip. I'm sure if Methuen can't provide one, I'm sure that they have local training services down there. But it was, having done it in 08 and made the trip with the baseball team when I was a baseball coach, it's helpful to have a trainer just in case someone were to get sick at night. You have someone there. So our coaches for the bus ride are all CPR certified, so I feel confident that we have the right chaperones that are leading us down on this trip. But it's a great opportunity. The educational component would obviously be the history of baseball at the Hall of Fame when they visited that. Great opportunity for these kids, play on Doubleday Field. Hoping you guys would grant permission.
Madam Chair, if I might,
Yes.
Mr. Druin has submitted all the proper paperwork in alignment with the school committee policy on out-of-state and overnight field trips.
Okay, excellent. All right, any questions, comments from the committee?
One more thing.
Yes.
The only cost would be the rental of the field, which would be a couple $100. I believe the boosters are going to take care of a coach bus and whatnot, so it's very, very minimal cost to play a league game, to be honest with you.
Awesome, okay. Mr. Moncada?
I'm all set. That sounds cool. Yeah, it's great.
Thank you. Thank you.
Mr. Russo?
No questions at this time, thank you.
No questions.
No, I have no questions. I just want to thank you for your hard work with the MVC and all that you do to bring these opportunities to Tewksbury.
Thank you. Hopefully,
awesome.
Mr. Russo's son will get a chance to
Yeah.
toe the rubber.
Yeah,
So,
yeah. No, this is a trip of a lifetime for some of
yeah,
these
no,
kids.
it's a good opportunity for the kids. Thank you.
Yeah, do we have a motion?
Make a motion to approve the Tewksbury High baseball team travel to Cooperstown in New York in April 25th and 6th, as presented.
Second.
Okay. All in favor, please say aye.
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 Okay.
Awesome.
Awesome, Mr. Jones.
Lastly, Mr. Libby, George the sign guy is matriculating his way down from Maine tomorrow. That sign should be fixed out in front of the building. I know that was a thorn in your side for a bit. I think we got to cover it tomorrow.
Thank you.
See you guys. Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Jones. Okay, and next we have our Wynn Middle School and TMHS Drama Program out-of-state field trip. Ms. Pellegrino.
Madam Chair and members of the committee, we have Ms. Celeste Pellegrino. She's not only our music teacher here at the high school, but also our theater director. She's seeking your approval to move forward with an out-of-state student field trip to New York City to participate in a theater workshop. I'm not going to steal all your thunder. You can talk about this a little bit more too, Celeste. Tour the Museum of Broadway and see Hattiestown on Broadway. You have their request and all the pertinent details in your packet. Likewise, Ms. Celeste Pellegrino and Mr. Jonathan DePrima have submitted all the proper paperwork for your consideration, and Celeste is here to take any questions you may have about this trip.
Yes, we're looking forward to hopefully be able to offer this annual trip to New York City with our combined drama programs. As was said, we are looking to go see the musical Hadestown in addition to doing a Broadway workshop. We're doing Ellen Stardust Diner again for lunch, which is always a big hit. It's kind of like doing 2 shows in one day. And something that's really wonderful about this trip is it really bridges the gap between the middle school and high school theater program. And I feel strongly that it's really made both of our programs stronger doing this trip together. Also, our high school booster club is looking for ways to help fundraise, subsidize the cost for this trip this year. We're understanding that every year this trip does slightly increase. It's just how things go with ticket sales and all of that. So we are looking for ways that we can do that for our students this year.
Great.
Are there any questions?
Yeah, any questions? Mr. Moncada?
No, that also sounds great. Yeah.
Mrs. Anderson?
No questions, but thank you for continuing to include the Wynn Middle School. I think it's a good bridge to bring them up to the high school.
Mr. Russo?
Just one, can you just clarify, how many students are participating this past year? Do you know?
This is with 42 students, the numbers, and we always sell out.
Yeah, that's what I thought. Okay, thank you.
Okay. Mrs. B. Johnny Smith?
No, no questions. Thank you.
I don't have any questions. I wrote down a bunch of things. Just in general, I know the students do a really great job at the end of the performances in recognizing all that you do for students, and I don't know how much, if anybody's following along or even watches these meetings, but
Of course they do.
if there's anybody watching, I just want to take a moment to acknowledge some of the good things that you're doing, both at the middle school and the high school, in terms of giving kids so much autonomy in learning the craft of drama and art. And I don't think they realize you sit in the audience with us while the students do everything. They're doing lighting, they're doing sound, they're doing the directing. So, and you don't make cuts. Every student that tries out makes it, they do something, and you put on the most amazing performances. So thank you so much for the opportunities that you bring to students at both the Wynn School and this school, and then going above and beyond by providing these opportunities to go out of state, to see shows, and to see that what they're doing isn't that far off from what they're going to go see in New York City, I think. I mean, I'm pretty proud of what you're doing. So
Thank you.
anyway, thank you very much for all that you're doing. So, anyway, there's a motion.
I'll make a motion to approve the Wynn High School drama out-of-state trip to New York City.
I'll second.
Okay, a motion by Mr. Russo, second by Mrs. Biagioni Smith. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Okay, and that's unanimous.
Thank
and
you.
we can move on from
Oh,
that.
don't go anywhere, Ms. Pellegrino. Please stay right there. Madam Chair, your words couldn't have been better in consideration of the next student recognition that we're about to tell you about. I'm so proud to recognize Miss Julia Baruchik. Am I saying that right? Baruchik. And Ms. Pellegrino, you work with students with just such wonderful natural talent, and you provide opportunities that are allowing us now to recognize the work Julia has done in theater. Julia has won a national competition called Young Arts in Musical Theater Division. Julia is the only student from Massachusetts to win the musical theater category. In Ms. Pellegrino's words, This is a huge, capital, huge deal, and Ms. Pellegrino is here right now to honor you, Julia, in all of your accomplishments. So, thank you for joining us at the podium. I want to let her talk a little bit about you before we have a recognition to share with you.
So I'm so proud of Julia. Julia has been a pillar of our theater and choral program at TMHS. She's only a junior, but I mean, it feels like she's been here forever. She has been in countless shows in choir every single semester. But what's so amazing is Julia goes on and pursues her art outside of TMHS. She does so many community theater shows. Even this fall, she was doing 2 at the exact same time. And she takes voice lessons, and it just goes on and on what she does to pursue her art. This competition had 11,000 applicants, and I'm just going to go out on a limb and say the musical theater competitions in general are so competitive. And as a soprano, and I know because I'm also a soprano, it is the most competitive category. So for Julia to have won this competition is just remarkable and shows how much work she puts into the arts. And not only that, she welcomes everyone into, I'm going to start crying. She welcomes everyone into the theater program, and she's the biggest advocate for people to be and stay in chorus. So congratulations. This couldn't have gone to a more deserving person.
And she's an amazing student, too.
Yes.
The first is a resolution of recognition, whereas Julia Baruchik, a junior at Tewksbury Memorial High School and a member of the TMHS Concert Choir and the Theater Company, entered the 2025 Young Arts National Competition. The school committee recognizes Julia's outstanding achievement as she was the winner of the 2025 Young Arts National Competition in the Musical Theater Division. And whereas Julia was one of almost 11,000 applicants in over 10 disciplines, and she is the only winner in the Musical Theater Division in the state of Massachusetts. And whereas Julia's accomplishment is a testament to her dedication, talent, and hard work in the arts. Her success not only highlights her individual creativity, but also brings pride to our entire school community. And whereas Julia Baruchik has brought great pride, recognition, enthusiasm, and honor to herself, to her parents, to the Tewksbury Memorial High School, and to the town of Tewksbury. Now, therefore, be it resolved that the Tewksbury School Committee applauds, honors, and recognizes the theatrical and musical abilities and talent of Julia Baruchik. Congratulations. This is on behalf of the Governor of the Commonwealth of Massachusetts. On behalf of the residents of the Commonwealth of Massachusetts, I am pleased to confer upon you this Governor's citation in recognition of your selection as a winner of the 2025 Young Arts Award for your accomplishments in the theater musical discipline. As your work ushers in the next generation of artists to watch, we hope you continue pursuing your artistry and finding creativity, success, and happiness. Congratulations.
You to stay right there. Mr. Marshall is going to take a picture of you with your theater coat. Mom and Dad, if you'd like to come up as well. We will be sharing this about you. So stay right there.
Top kill.
And Jason, if she could just get one with Kayla as well, that would be great. Thanks.
Come on your side here.
We're all friends.
Love it.
Congratulations.
Thank you for entertaining me. Okay. Great. That was great. Okay. And feel free to head out. You don't have to stay for get a little longer.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Congratulations.
But you're welcome to stay.
Congratulations.
And I look forward to the next shows. Okay. And next, Mrs. Terry Regan, if you want to introduce our presenters.
Sure. Madam Chair, with us tonight are Cindy Tamor and William Lupini, senior consultants of Rebus Associates. Before our esteemed guests share the results and recommendations from their Tewksbury Public Schools special education audit, I wanted to just take a moment to remind you, Madam Chair, as well as members of the committee, why we chose to do this audit. In a short time frame, we had 2 major reviews done from the Department of Elementary and Secondary Education, DESE, known as the TFM. I know you've heard these acronyms before, Tiered Focus Monitoring, which monitors our special ed programming, our English learner programming, and our civil rights programming. And then we had the Comprehensive District Review happening at the same time, which looks at all facets of our school system. They both noted that we had areas of needed improvement, respectively, to increase the percentage of special ed students' access to full inclusion and the need to strengthen instructional supports in tiered instruction in the general education setting so that both special education students and our English learners could have greater success academically. Additionally, we have had significant leadership changes: superintendent role, assistant superintendent role, the director of student support and student services and special education, and the assistant director of student services and special education. This is why you approved my request to engage in this third-party audit to further break down those areas of needed improvement and build a roadmap, if you will, for this leadership team to make necessary changes in supporting all students and staff in the district to meet these goals. So with that, I'm going to turn the floor over to Cindy and Bill to share the outcome of this audit. Welcome.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Welcome.
So what we have provided you is with a multi-page long report that I believe you all have, and a PowerPoint that acts as an executive summary. So we're going to take you through the PowerPoint. We'll answer any questions you may have. Again, as the superintendent said, we were hired in order to give you an objective third-party view as to the strengths of Tewksbury and where you need to make some necessary improvement in order to improve outcomes for students. She's trying to work the technology, not so well. I can just.
Is it back on? It might be-
Nancy can do it because it's behind us.
Let me just see if that's...
As they're trying to.
There we go.
So Bill and I have done this a number of times together in many districts, and the good news is there are common themes among most districts. The bad news is there are common themes among most districts where work needs to be done in order to improve your results. This is some of the districts we've done, and we've added on a couple of more since then. Bill and I also work with a number of districts in other capacities around systems design, program development, evaluation, and coaching a number of administrators.
And you can read our bios in the report. First of all, it's a pleasure to be here with you. Cindy is a longtime superintendent, special education director, and done some interim work as a special ed director and running a collaborative. That we have in common. And I was a superintendent for over 25 years, and actually also spent a year. Cindy was at EDCO Collaborative, and I was at Lab Collaborative for a year as the interim directors. And we've been doing this work together. Most of these districts we recognize that list is really incomplete because there are a lot of people looking to do this kind of work and asking us to help them to look at areas of improvement in their special education programming, which I will say up front often leads us to, and you will see in this report, leads us to a discussion of general education, because that's where generally speaking, a lot of the issues that we end up talking to school districts about begin, right? And you'll see that, I think, throughout this report.
Okay. So again, just the purpose of the report was to consider your program's reorganization and revisions that should be implemented. Please know that we are very aware that Tewksbury, like every district in the Commonwealth, is facing financial challenges, and nothing here is meant to be an immediate fix. You should be thinking of any recommendations we make as improvements over time. There are some things here that may be quick fixes, what we call easy wins, and there are others that will take a fair amount of consideration by the committee.
Yeah, and the thing about that is that's not necessarily a reflection of how much money they might cost, right? There are a number of things that you may look at and say, doesn't look like, we may point out that it doesn't look like there's a cost to that, but change is difficult, right? The process of getting people there, getting teachers, building level people to the point where they can work with implementing those kinds of things, families as well, is not so easy even for no cost items. So, right, what generally districts end up doing with this, Brenda, is to start mapping out what plans might look like for implementation over some period of time, because this is not something, the people who try to implement these things too quickly generally fail.
Nancy?
She did.
So these are the methodologies, these are the things we covered, and we do this for all districts. General findings, things that you know about your own district, we just included in the summary. What is of interest here is that you are having a decrease in the number of your students, not quickly, but slowly. Again, not uncommon for the state as a whole, the student population is dropping. But what is also interesting is the significant increase in your multi-language learners that is impacting your instruction. So your number of students in special ed have increased approximately 3.5%. Again, this is common post-COVID. We're finding this even at the state level. The overall state level has gone up 3%. You're just slightly higher than the state level at this point.
And one thing you'll hear us refer to a number of times as one of the things that is unique about your district is the number of transitions for students between buildings. There are a number of areas where we'll highlight that as an advantage, right? The consistency in a particular grade level, but there are also a number of areas of challenge that creates, and we don't mean to criticize the particular structure of those grade structures. It merely is something that needs to be taken into account as you plan to address some of these recommendations.
So when we are in an initial conversation with a district, we settle on a list of key questions that they want answered. We do not answer the report is not written question 1, answer question 2. It's pretty much a narrative, and we come up with themes. In your case, we came up with 11 themes that we will address tonight. We will tell you, we strayed into some general ed stuff more than we typically do, and part of that is because of things that were said to us when we were interviewing everybody. We've interviewed all your principals, many of your central administration, members of CPAC.
Case managers.
Case managers. I mean, we were here for a couple of days interviewing people. Everybody was very forthcoming. We don't use names in our report on purpose because we want people to be able to feel safe saying to us whatever they need to, and they did. So we will walk you through these findings. Again, this is a summary of the findings. For more detail, I would refer you to the report. One of the concerns that we have is 30% of Tewksbury students are considered students with disabilities. That's a combination of special education and 504 accommodation plans. That's a very high number. What we often say to districts is parents will try to get their child help, however they can get their child help. If there are no other systems in place in general ed to assist students with intervention and supports, parents will go the legal route, and that being special education and 504s. And as you all know, once a student is on that path, it's very hard to get them off. You have 81 students out of district. I understand as of today it's a little higher. That is not a horrific number considering your overall population. What is concerning is the amount of money it's costing you. So the question becomes, where are they placed? Are they day students? Are they residential students? What are the nature of those placements that they're in? Because it is costing you quite a bit of money. So for recommendations, we're going to talk a lot tonight about Tier 1 interventions. Hopefully, you're all familiar with Multi-Tiered Systems of Support, MTSS, which is the state and the field's preference for helping students before they have to be referred to special ed or for a 504. It's a series of tiered interventions, Tier 1, Tier 2, Tier 3, that students progress through in order to get the type of remediation and support they need. Tier 1 support is in the classroom. It is the general ed teacher's responsibility. There may be some additional support from related service people, from paraprofessionals, from reading specialists, but it is that is the point at which, if interventions are done well, with fidelity, and are measured periodically, you can intervene and help a student before it becomes necessary to refer that student for special ed. And that is key to everything that you need to do in order to have a better handle on your special ed numbers and to make sure you're servicing children the best that Tewksbury can. We also recommend conducting an in-depth data analysis for your students who are on IEPs and 504s. What we find is there are inflection points in which students get referred. They may be doing well, K through 4, they get to the middle school, all of a sudden they're referred. Or maybe they're doing well K1, 2, and they get to 3rd grade. So it's important to dig through that data and try to see where students are getting referred and why, and to try to address those problems or those concerns proactively, and so that that pattern does not continue. And of course, we talk about incorporating training and disability identification and designing services relevant. We're going to talk about that more later on. What we find is, because Massachusetts is what we call a categorical state, there's 13 categories in special ed that we now have to adhere to. For many years, we were not a categorical state. We find that sometimes we are pigeonholing kids by their category as opposed to what does this child really need. Not what the description in some book says, but how is this child presenting and what should we do for the child as an individual.
Yeah, the one thing I want to add to what Cindy said way back in the beginning as she started to discuss this section, she said when these regular education strategies are absent, it's not only when they're absent, because I think what you're going to see in your district is that a number of these plans that are in place are actually very good, some of the best we've seen. It's when they're not known. Right? If teachers aren't aware of them, if they haven't received enough professional development in them, if parents don't know what they are, those interventions that are possible through regular education, then parents will seek strategies that they know are available, that being special education, 504s, et cetera. So, many districts, we're talking to them about the lack of DCAPs and those kinds of plans being available. That's not the case here. Right, but I think you're going to see through a number of the recommendations that we talk about whether people are actually aware of what those are, how well implemented they are, those kinds of things as something that stands in the way. Right, so we talked here, again, this leads nicely into what I just said. There is a commitment to developing a comprehensive and robust system of interventions and supports throughout the system. You have 2 schools now that either don't have a WIN block, or what we heard in our interviews, they're not currently delivering interventions with fidelity for all students. That would be Ryan and the high school. This takes time, right? This takes time for professional development. It takes time for implementation. We talk a little bit about the PD later on. But it's not something that's going to happen overnight, but you're on the right track in that those plans exist. And you have well, it's not so unique among districts, but you have a challenge here in terms of the growing number of multi-language learners will need additional general education supports, including the possibility of sheltered English immersion. So what do we talk about in recommendations. We talked about making sure you have a culture where administrators and staff articulate a well-structured Tier 1 intervention system and data analysis, and that people can see that those things actually happen in the building, and that they are a regular part of the professional development for everyone who works in the school. That you identify appropriate Tier 2 supports for implementation, make sure you have high-quality resources, and that staff are well-trained in what those pieces are. You know, inevitably, Cindy and I have done a number of these, both together and separately. I actually did some of these kind of reviews for the Collins Center years back. Inevitably, when people began to experience budget issues, they would naturally gravitate toward cutting those things that we would refer to as tier 2 interventions. And that's actually the last place they should have gone. Because then they would be surprised, school committee members, administrators, by the fact that their special education numbers would go up. Well, again, back to what Cindy said earlier, if parents only see special education as the place they can go to get what they believe their child needs, that's where they're going. But if you have these regular education, these Tier 2 interventions in place, and they're well-known, right, throughout the community, among your staff, and they're well implemented, people will go there. Again, you have the building blocks of those documents, they're there. It's a matter of making sure people are aware. And then implementing a robust win block, or whatever that intervention block is, including the Ryan School and Tewksbury. We're going to talk a lot, there was a finding, one of the finding recommendations earlier had to do with your grade configuration. And I said that that there are a number of advantages to that. There are also these challenges, and one of the challenges, and I was superintendent in Brookline for 11 years. So in Brookline, the principals used to talk often about Brookline being a system of schools, not a school system, right? We heard that in some of the interviews here, naturally created by the fact that all your second graders, all your third graders, all your fifth graders are here, but you have a lot of transitions. That presents a set of challenges. And that set of challenges around how do we maintain a level of consistency, you're going to hear that over the next few recommendations in particular. How do we maintain that level of consistency from grade level to grade level so that parents know what's coming for their child?
And there it is. Okay. So when we talk about continuous services, is inconsistent. So when in special education, they talk about from least restrictive to most restrictive. We also talk about vertically. So when a child is diagnosed and placed on an IEP, it is quite anxiety-provoking for parents. Being a parent by itself is anxiety-provoking. Having a child with special needs raises the level. Parents want to know what to expect. If my child has been diagnosed, let's say, with, autism, because it's most common, what is going to happen in first grade? What is going to happen in fifth grade? What is going to happen in seventh grade? What is going to happen in ninth grade? What is going to happen 12th or postgraduate, depending on how long the child is with us? It is not clear in Tewksbury that there is a through-line planning services for students with particular disabilities, whether it's autism, social, emotional, behavioral, reading, physical, medical. There is no clear through line. They also shared with us that some buildings, and to Bill's conversation that he'll have later about autonomy, principals feel empowered to make decisions, but there is inconsistency between buildings. So while Principal A may say, I'm going to do a co-teaching model, and it works great for kids, then they go to Building B, there is no co-teaching model. The parent wants to know, wait a minute, what's going on here? I was expecting a continuation of services that benefited my child. It no longer exists. Now I'm concerned that my child is not going to get what he or she worked well with, and that's when you get a referral for out of district. Yep. Okay? So that's one of those inflection points that we talk about, that you have to be, families have to know what to expect. There are some natural differences between levels that have to do with kids, kids' development, kids growing, and also the fact that if we are doing our job well, SPED teachers will tell you their job is to put themselves out of business. All right? That can't happen in all cases, but that's what they would really like to see. So if we are doing that, we should see growing independence and self-sufficiency for our students. So you should have programs that change, but still address needs. So the example I give all the time is a child with social emotional. When they're young, they have to learn self-control, regulation, they have to learn interpersonal skills. As they learn those skills, they may need less and less support. It doesn't mean they don't need any support. So what they get in grade 3 may look different in grade 10, where they need more of what we call a step-down program. Things aren't going well, I need a place to go for a couple of hours, get myself back together, go back out into the mainstream. But parents have to know you have that option all the way through for kids. So that is about the programming and the vertical alignment. We also talk about transition in 2 different ways here, and here we're talking about post-secondary transition. It is a legal requirement that we plan for children beginning at age 14, what is going to happen to them when they leave us, especially special ed children. Adult services are not an entitlement like special ed. It's an eligibility requirement, but you still have to plan for it. It has been shared with us that planning is not consistent. And one of the things that we are concerned about is too many people have a piece of it. There has been a movement in the state to have a transition specialist, or maybe 2 in a high school, so that one person can wrap their hands around this, because working with adult agencies is frustrating at best, if not nearly impossible, getting them to come to the table. So that is a recommendation we have. Articulating the continuum of services in your handbooks, on your website, so that parents know what to do, but also realizing you have to be flexible in that mapping. One of the things that we know in the special ed world, when you've been in it in a long time, is different disabilities grow in numbers and others decrease. And you have to have the flexibility in your programming and your staffing to make those adjustments. So we met with a district today that has a growing number of medically involved kids. They know this because they're seeing it in their pre-K. They have to start thinking ahead of time, what are the resources we're going to need to keep these children in district? So that's what we talk about with the flexibility. Anything else, Bill? No, accommodation, no. You can do that one.
I can, yes. So what the findings were here is that your building administrators and guidance counselors are responsible for that 504 process, that in many cases, we heard that 504 plans have been viewed as a consolation prize when a student is found not eligible for special education. And that, again, it goes back to that role of general ed interventions and support not being well-known, well-utilized prior to looking at a 504. So what we heard that we really appreciated is that the district is revamping the processes currently being used for 504, and that's a very good thing. That plan, and we've heard that it will, should include how and when referrals are made, the forms that are being used for that process, and the skill level and training and ongoing professional development of the people that are chairing those meetings. If it isn't obvious already, you're sitting with 2 people who believe that a lesser number of people exercising that kind of role at meetings, whether it's around the IEP meeting, whether it's around those transition plans, whether it's around 504 plans, the lesser number that can be well-trained and have practice and have the opportunity to talk with their colleagues about case studies, those kinds of things, is always better. In Brookline, I had a situation when we first started doing our own sort of internal look at special education and found that across our K-12 system, K-8 schools and 9-12 schools, we had 27 people who were chairing team meetings. 27 people. And that was too many. And so what we began by doing was creating a team chair structure in our district, reducing that number, putting more responsibility in their hands, you'll see later on, working with them to have evaluation responsibilities as well. And we both improved outcomes and lowered numbers, which is what you want to do. Lowering numbers without improving outcomes is not a good outcome. So that was our perspective, and you'll hear it a lot. I think there was one more thing. Oh, yeah. Regular education interventions, again, should be well known. Said in the slide that Cindy used earlier in relation to number 3, that there shouldn't be any secrets in what you have available for students, for family support in terms of regular education. I think you'll see later on that we actually recommend making sure that's in handbooks, that it's available to people on websites, in writing, shared often, because that's when people will really begin to work with you to buy into those things if they believe that your staff is well skilled at implementing those strategies, and that's where the professional development component comes in.
Okay. So we talked a little, early childhood, you now have 2 buildings. So again, we talk often about consistency across grades, consistency across and between buildings. And now that you have your pre-K in 2 buildings, it's very important. You don't want a situation where a parent's child ends up they meet somebody whose child is at Heathbrook, and they find out, oh, you get that? I don't get that. You never want that situation. And similarly, if you have a social emotional program at one building, you should have it as another, because you don't want a situation where a school becomes that school where all those kids go. So if you can afford it, if you can manage it, it would be a better idea. Again, staff report to us there is a lack of consistency between the 2 buildings in service delivery, programming, and general education supports. And inclusion is dependent on the availability of sufficient staffing. One of the things that happens when a school becomes heavy in a number of separate programs, substantially separate programs, and you want to include those kids, it creates an imbalance in the gen ed classrooms when they go to be included. All right? And that creates its own set of problems. So you have to be careful of how you're loading a building with sub-separate programs. Where you have big elementary schools, and one middle school, one high school, one middle, that's one elementary, that's different than what you have at your pre-K ones. So you need to be careful of the balance there. We think it's important that you have a preschool director who is dedicated to that position. For many children, the entry into special ed is when they come out of early intervention, EI. There is a grave difference between EI and public education. EI is a medical model. Decisions are made by doctors, recommendations are by doctors. Special ed is an education model. The crux of the model is, does this child need some sort of specialized instruction or related service in order to access education? They are not really concerned with other things, some other things. As long as you can access education, have your needs met, and make progress in your education. And the standard for progress is reasonable progress. That's preschool director becomes crucial to helping parents understand the difference, helping them feel heard, helping them feel that their children will receive the services they need, and then guiding them through pre-K 1 and then into Ryan. Where you have so many transitions, that is critical, because now they're moving from these small schools to this massive school. All right, and that would be a helpful position. Beyond that, you want somebody in a position where they can supervise and evaluate staff, where they can make recommendations for professional development, and where they can make programmatic adjustments as they see fit. Because what we know in special ed is those students that you get at that pre-K from EI predict your future. And you have to have somebody who can say to Candace, I'm seeing an uptick in X, Y, and Z. Maybe we need to think about where we're going to go.
Okay, the case manager structure, which we talked a little bit about earlier, you have 4.5 case managers and you know, reduced that number. The two main issues that we address in this report are, first of all, where they work, okay? So they work at multiple schools and are not necessarily covering contiguous schools, okay? So I'll make this up because I don't remember the specifics, but you might have somebody who operates at your K-2 level and then does 5-6. Okay, and what we're recommending is that you change that mindset so that they're operating where they split schools, and splitting schools is not a bad thing, but they do it in contiguous situations so that they are more aware of the kinds of things that that next school can do and can't do. Because often in transition situations, whether it's Brookline where we had K-8 schools and then a 9 to 12, or whether it's your district, which has many more transitions, you end up with schools saying, as they look at an IEP, well, we can't implement that here. Okay? Why does that happen? Sometimes a misunderstanding of what that IEP process actually is, okay? But also because there's no one who's familiar with that next school. And by making those assignments for contiguous schools, you can eliminate that. The second thing that we feel very strongly about having implemented these models in a number of places, which is not an easy thing to do, is making sure that those case managers of your Unit B have evaluation responsibilities or can have those evaluation responsibilities. It helps lessen the load of evaluations on your other evaluators, which my guess is are above what we might recommend for caseloads for evaluation. But it also puts them in a different position with the people who are around the table with them, a position that we believe is necessary for them to make sure that they have all the information necessary at the table to make sure that student, those parents get the service that they need and are looking for.
So this is the concerns that we raise about grade span configuration, and we also already referred to a number of the issues with multiple transitions. Again, parents need to know, what am I getting at the next grade span level? Will my child's services continue in a way that is effective for my child? The advantage is when you get a place to, like you have at Ryan, you have a better ability to control consistency. All your seconds are there, all your thirds are there, all your fourths are there. It's not like you have 5 buildings and you got 2, 2, 2, 2, and 2. Yet at the same time, it means, as Bill just referred to, you have kids who went from 1 to 2, and you're going to have kids who go from 4 to 5, then 6 to 7, then 8 to the high school. And every time you make that transition, you open yourself to some errors. To be fair, teachers want to protect kids. Sending a child to the middle school is scary for parents, and if teachers are not familiar with the middle school program, they get concerned, and they develop IEPs with all the best intentions of protecting the child. You get to the middle school's on a different schedule. They can't implement that IEP as it's now written. So now they have to meet with the family, say we have to rewrite it because we're on a different bell schedule, our people have a rotation. Families take that as you're taking something away from me. All right? And now you have a situation that becomes legal. So again, if you have cheers that can walk parents through it, or you've articulated in your materials, this is what happens at the middle school, and you have a chance to prep parents for it, it's a little bit more effective. The other problem here is making sure we have differences between your buildings and how they're approaching MTSS and other regular ed. Again, because principals have autonomy, there is not consistency among your 5 buildings as to how this is being approached. We don't even know if there is the same level of commitment or understanding how to do it. Granted, it's different at the elementary than at the middle and the high school because of the types of schedules, but it doesn't make it any less necessary. And we want to make sure that everybody in the district understands these are the priorities for Tewksbury. We're committed to MTSS, we're committed to high-quality materials, we're committed to best practices, and we expect to see them across every building, across every grade. And people will be held accountable for it, and which we will talk about a little bit later.
Yeah, and the thing I would add to that is what's just as important in that, and again, it's funny for me to think back 30-some years and think about that time in Brookline, which again, principals within that district would describe that as, no, this is not a school system bill. This is a system of schools. Never confuse the two. And the way that was lessened was in what Cindy just said, right? We had regular discussions about what was our tight coupling, that is the non-negotiables, and where your ability as a principal was within that, where was your wiggle room? So for example, later on, we're going to show you a recommendation around your process for adding a paraprofessional, okay? There are no negotiables within that process in the world I'm describing. There are no negotiables. Here's the process. This is how we follow it. If a principal believes, or if a team believes, a paraprofessional is needed for a certain position, or a certain situation in the building. But there are other things where we may have more of a defined autonomy. That is, this is what we're trying to implement, and this is what you can do. I'll give you an example from the ed eval work, which is the last recommendation, right? One of the things that we work with a lot of districts on is the work around high leverage strategies. These are the high leverage strategies that we believe are key to making sure we increase student achievement in our school district. So we mentioned to your principals earlier, I work with a district not far from here, and theirs is a focus on student engagement. That's what they've decided as a district. Okay? That's one approach. Some places say, look, the given here is that we're going to focus on high leverage strategies. But the defined autonomy is that you in your building with your staff get to define what those are, or some of them are. What's important about that conversation is not where you end up. What's important about that conversation is deciding what is tightly coupled and what is defined autonomy. And that is I will say to you, that is particularly important for you, given the number of transitions you have in this district, that a parent can see. I said to your principals earlier, my youngest child, who's now 28, she's legally blind. She went to the Beverly Public Schools, and they did amazing work for her. Some of while I was there, the short time I was still there as superintendent, but most of her school career was after that. They could talk with us in the early ages about what their plans and their thinking was about Kristen as she progressed through. Now, they better have been able to do that because they were sitting in front of a superintendent and her mother, the classroom teacher, who I think sometimes was tougher than dad, right? But we could have that conversation, and we felt supported. We felt that these were people that really knew what they were doing because they could have that conversation about what might be down the road and the options that might be there in middle school, high school. And that's how you make people feel that they're part of the process. That's how you make people feel that, that you have that tight coupling and defined autonomy that they're looking for around the programming that might be available for their child.
No, it's fine. We do this all the time.
We do.
Okay, we're on educational.
Education support.
Education, am I doing it or are you doing it? Okay.
You can.
Okay, so you have 139 educational support personnel in the district, and you just had a new contract. There are some important wins in your new contract, and there are some impending issues. You went to one category, which I will tell you, having negotiated those type of contracts, makes life a little easier instead of defining what each type of para is, yet at the same time, there is no definition. And what happens with paraprofessionals in the special ed world is they tend to have specific responsibilities. Do you toilet? Do you lift? Do you do restraints? Do you do behavior control? Do you do instructional remediation? So without categories, now everybody is the same. So now you have the burden of making sure every paraprofessional is trained in everything you need them to be trained in, because you don't want a situation where you have to move your paras around for whatever reasons happen, and it happens almost on a daily level. Brenda can tell you that, Candace can tell you that. And somebody says, oh, I can't do that job. So now you have this obligation to make sure everybody, quite honestly, is multi-skilled. So that is a professional development challenge for you. As Bill said, we discovered while there is on paper a process for requesting a one-on-one, people work around it. Not only is that a financial burden, quite frankly, it's bypassing the IEP process. The IEP process is very specific. If a child gets a one-on-one, that is a service that has to be determined at an IEP meeting and written into the IEP. Somebody cannot say, don't worry about it, I'll hire somebody and they'll follow Johnny all day. All right? From a monetary point of view, you can't claim that on circuit breaker. Right? But beyond that, it's undermining a very important process, because now what happens is, oh, Johnny got a one-on-one, I'm going to go to the principal, I'm going to make a case, either as a teacher or a parent, that Mary should have a one-on-one. And now you have no system for determining the validity of the need. And you really need to do that. The other problem that we worry about in special ed, and I'll be very honest about this, is over-servicing kids. And sometimes a special ed para is an over-service. I always tell the story that when I was a superintendent and I'm walking through the high school and I'm observing instruction and there's a para in the room and I don't even know who she's attached to, and the teacher asks a question and the para raises her hand to answer the question. We had gotten to a point, this para had been with the student so long, why would he bother to do anything? Here's my para, she's going to do it for me. We've overserviced this child and undermined his possible outcomes. So you always have to be cognizant of, why does the student need a para? Is this para forever? How do we increase a student's self-sufficiency and independence? So that's why there's a process, and those decisions are made at a team meeting. So we would also suggest you conduct an analysis of how and when the ESPs are assigned to schools, students, or classroom or students. And again, your paras are now going to have to do everything. You have to train them. But getting back to MTSS, paraprofessionals are not allowed to give initial instruction. That's the law. They are allowed to do reinstruction, remediation, support. All right? So if you're going to implement an MTSS system, which on paper you have designed and which happens to be very good on paper, this is a role for your paras as well, but you have to train them. How do you do reinstruction? How do you do remediation with a kid? And again, develop an understanding of the roles and responsibilities across grade spans.
So in terms of professional development, you know that you have 2 PD days at the start of the school year, 2 more within the year, and 4 half-day sessions, and that's not enough. This year alone, we cited here, districts have, and I'm sure you've heard about all these things, have the new IEP form, a new rubric for educator evaluation, continuation of the dyslexia screening and remediation, and changes to health and physical education curriculum, and that's before you get to district initiatives. What we're suggesting here is that people need to be creative, right? Many places have changed, and maybe you have in some ways already, have changed the way they use faculty meeting time. They do targeted professional development during the school day, some professional development actually in the classroom, or coaching, but finding ways to increase those opportunities during the day is going to be very, very important for you. Oh, and the other thing we mentioned here is that we encourage districts to have a multi-year professional development program within the strategic planning process, and that those plans should should have indicators of success. Let me give you an example, quick example from a conversation we had today. We were with a district that said that every year they're devoting a significant amount of funding to Wilson and other reading strategy training for their staff. And we were blown away by the amount that they were spending and the number of people that they were training each year. And we've heard from some other districts where they had tried that approach, and what they found themselves doing was losing those people, because now they have this wonderful training. And they mentioned 2 districts pretty close to here that tend to have those people come work for them instead. The district today, when we ask the question, what do you do about that? Do you have people leave and go to those districts? Yes. What do? We spend the same amount of money next year. Because it's important for our kids that there are trained people who can do that work. The other district that we talked to about a week ago, they said, yeah, we kind of gave up on it. We were spending all this money just to train people to go to those 2 districts. So we quit. 2 very different approaches to a problem. I'll go with the people that we were with today, because they've said, our kids deserve this. We have a very high hill to overcome, but we're going to keep going at it. Now, the only thing I would add to that is, do you know what your indicators of success are? How do you know if that's a good investment of dollars? What does your plan say about what you're going to look for as the indicators of whether that's actually working or not? So I would add that.
So as we kept saying, this all should be public. You should have, people should know what to expect, your staff should know what to expect, your parents should know what to expect. Again, not just in terms of special ed, but in terms of what does a DCAP look like? What are the strategies on a DCAP? Have people been trained in it? Do they feel safe and have permission to use it as they see fit? What does your MTS look like? Tier 1, Tier 2, Tier 3? What are the strategies? What are the materials? What does a typical MTS intervention plan look like? All this should be public. It should be in your handbooks, it should be in your program of studies, it should be on your website. But for your staff, you should have a central repository of all your materials, all your strategies, all your documents, all your paperwork. I'm a 3rd grade teacher of a kid struggling with math. I should be able to go to a site, and I do know you're working on this because we've been told you're working on it, but do they know it's there? Pull up 3rd grade math, long division, and look at all the possible things I can do. All right? And it has to be, again, across all grades, across all buildings.
So I think this is what Cindy was alluding to earlier when we said there's at least one area that we addressed that really wasn't within the scope of this project. But I believe that it has great impact, and that's the area of educator evaluation. We heard, and we believe, based on our interviews, that educator evaluation is not being carried out in all schools with consistency and fidelity, that you have some examples where, I'll say it this way, where you have a more significant number of educators being rated as exemplary than your student performance would demonstrate. And again, we said here this wasn't part of the audit. We would suggest you take a look at the implementation of the system to ensure that the focus of the district is on teaching and learning. I gave the administrator some examples earlier of what we've done. We both do a lot of work in this area around, and I mentioned the district earlier, that if the focus is student engagement, right? And that's what we're looking for. I do calibration observations with that district. They do calibration observations together. Other districts that I'm working with have selected certain high leverage strategies. Everybody in the building knows that's what we're observing for. Everyone in the building knows what those are because we've used faculty meeting time and other PD time to work on what those things exactly look like. and they know that that's what we're looking for. We would encourage you to do more of that work. It should be implemented consistently across schools. I have a district I worked with, this is not here, I have a district I work with where one of the main issues that was raised was everybody knew that you could achieve a certain rating in a certain building, but not in certain other buildings. If you aren't consistent across schools, particularly in a district that has the number of transitions that you have, people will know, and people will talk about that if they haven't already, where you focus on high leverage teaching strategies, and I know you already do some work with Bill Rebus around this, where teachers get where it's part of the practice that teachers get commendations and recommendations. And that it's tied to the professional development program. That's what we would recommend. Again, that was slightly beyond the scope, but I think ties in very nicely to the other areas of recommendation that we provided.
Now, there should be, in terms of educator evaluation, and I know that Brenda is a NISIP graduate, and I'm a NISIP coach, among other things, and one of the things that we drive home to them all the time is there should be a through line again. Your district goals, Brenda's goals, your administrator's goals, your teacher's goals, and they should, to the best of your ability, be focused on teaching and learning. So if Brenda has a goal to implement MTSS, what does that look like all the way down the line? Who is holding people accountable for it? Who is going in and observing how well it's being done? And again, this is not a game of gotcha. This is a game of continuous improvement. How do we continually improve as educators so that we improve outcomes for students? That is the purpose of all this work.
So one of the things that we try to do here, given Cindy's comments up front about the financial status, the financial situation in Massachusetts and among school districts, is really try to be cognizant and specific that there are recommendations that can be implemented here that have little or no cost. As I said up front, that doesn't mean they're easy. It just means they have little or no cost. Some of them actually may be more difficult than some of the others with bigger price tags, right? But there are a number of items, we mentioned those, articulating the continuum of services, refinement of the case manager assignments, adhering to defined process for creating ESP roles. Again, no cost to those items. And then there will be others that will have smaller cost, and you can take a creative approach and look at those for the immediate need. But two in particular, the one we mentioned about early education and the one we mentioned about case managers and having evaluation responses, they may have larger price tags, and they may require more time and planning and consultation with your union and others. Right? It doesn't mean they're not going to happen. It doesn't mean they're harder to implement. In some ways, I can tell you that the Unit B recommendation is easier to put in place. It's just the cost that comes with it. But one of our recommendations is to sort of take a look at these different recommendations in these three buckets and begin to plot that out already in that way, and begin to be able to look at implementation, communication with the people who need to know about this plan, what you intend to do with it in all of those manners. So, and I know the administration is committed to do that. So we're happy to answer any questions you may have.
Madam Chair, if I may, prior to your questions, obviously, there's a lot of information to digest, some of which you've heard these ideas, recommendations throughout our last couple of years through our district goals, and some recommendations that are being reinforced through this audit that, as I said, you've heard. The key here is, well, first of all, let me just say, continuing this presentation with faculty, staff, and parents, right? That's going to have to happen soon, and we'll work with our administration to do that. And we want to acknowledge there are several technical changes that may sound really easy, but some, the case manager example, may sound easy to reschedule who's doing the caseload and workload, but over time, we'll need to bargain and think through the administrative piece of that. Not only that, but train. Right? Where are we with that? So I just want to acknowledge that some of these lower hanging priorities. And you can't see my messy spreadsheet here, but really 8 of these recommendations come under, could we do this right away? Could we spend time, because it is still, time, to work through these recommendations? And then when you look at some of them, they span across time, money, and bargaining. The reconfiguration of our school grade levels, perhaps. That is something we're continuously working on now, but what will that look like in 2 years from now? So I just want to bring it up as there's adaptive change, there's technical change, but truly what we want to do is create a culture where we're sustaining the change we really need to improve student outcomes, special ed, ESL, and all students, and really improve and lift our capacity of our educators, because I know deep in their hearts that's what they want too, and working so hard to do that. So I want to thank Bill and Cindy. They've worked so thoroughly and closely with our team, and have really looked at all of these reports together with our data to think through what is the most important thing that Tewksbury does. So thank you to you, and certainly welcome your questions for our presenters. Ms. Tharrett is also up here at the table if she can help answer. But think about this as a starting point again, really, for us, and thinking through that this is a roadmap to help us keep churning through what we have to do to improve. So I hope you appreciate all of the information. I know it's a lot, and welcome your questions.
Thank you. So, yeah, again, thank you so much for being here.
Nice to be here.
And I'll open up to the committee if anybody wants to take a first stab at some questions. Mr. Moncada?
Break the ice. So I also kept track. I had about 6 that were
Right now.
kind of, yeah.
Okay.
And I would agree that I don't think there is anything as no cost. It's, it costs something, whether it be time or manpower. So low cost is, You also mentioned that, like walk before you run kind of a thing. And you mentioned that over time, these can be achieved. Like what kind of a timeline do you envision? Is it how many years are we talking?
So I suppose, again, that would be depending on which of these you're talking about. Rolling out your MTSS and training people, at least in Tier 1, I would put 2 years on it. But for it to become institutionalized, I would put 5 years on it. The real test of it is if you have a change in building administration, does it continue? Does it become so part of teachers' practices it doesn't matter who's in the main office? Because that's what we do for kids.
Okay. And with the 11 recommendations then, is that, would you expect them to all be achievable, or something that, or just try to reach towards achieving? Do you expect them to all be achievable, I guess would be the question.
Oh, I think they're all achievable, or we wouldn't have included them. Different districts have their own political and other issues that make certain things more of a challenge for them than they might be just down the street. So that's why the total timeline is very hard.
Yeah, okay.
Right? But I don't think we've put anything there. I know we haven't. There's nothing in that report that we haven't seen implemented or that we haven't implemented ourselves.
So one of the questions we've been asked on other audits we've done is, what is the preferred organization of a special ed department? How should it look? And the answer we always give is there is no preferred organization, other than having a special ed director, which you have to have under law. Every city and town looks different, and it's driven by money, the culture of the town, the size of the town, and the expectations of, quite honestly, the family and the staff. I was working with a superintendent this week who finally got to a place where her special ed teachers would run their own annual meetings. In her district, the culture was, oh no, they never ran annual meetings. you know, in this district, it's a common practice.
Or
You know,
consistent.
it's sort of. Yeah, we were told, so it's becoming more frequent. So I couldn't say to you if that was right or wrong. It depends on what comes about. As Bill said, it's very context-driven, some of this.
I mean, you heard earlier that we have a number of sort of core beliefs. I think we share that belief about the fewer number of people doing a particular responsibility, right? Whatever that fewer number is, it was more in a district the size of Brookline than it might be here, but still, how can we make sure that we have a quality control and that we exercise at least part of that through the number of people that we have at these different contact points? Because the more we have, the more chance for error or difference, and it degrades the service that parents and kids are receiving. So that's there's things like that that are sort of a core belief, so I would call sort of best practices.
Yeah.
But not everyone's able to achieve those kinds of things to the letter of what we would like.
And what I'm going to add to that is we cannot understate the importance of ongoing professional development.
Right.
Special ed and 504s are so nuanced, all right? Not just understanding the disability and what a child needs, but the legal piece of it. That if people are not well-trained in those practices and the regulations and laws, it leaves a lot of room for error. And error is what gets you into a hearing or replacement or a settlement. I teach 504 development and 504 determination. The standard in the law is there a impairment that impacts a life activity, that list is this long, all right, has substantial impact. Substantial is not defined in the law. It becomes up to the people in that room to make that determination. You can see the possibility of wide disparity between different teams making that determination. So those are the type of things that are so nuanced in disability law that's why we constantly say the fewer hands you have on that decision-making and the better trained those people are, the better outcome for your children.
And I just want to add, I hope you heard, between our newly improved DCAP, between our MTSS and SST process, we have systems now currently developed and in place. I shouldn't say system, documents. It's really building a system of utilizing them. That DCAP is critical in that process right there and thinking through accommodations that every student can utilize or have versus potentially needing that 504. So this is about PD too with our staff, using those well-written and developed documents and processes we have, and because that has to happen. Having them or having a schedule with an intervention block is just the first step. Using it and sustaining that level of practice is key here. Requires professional development again.
Well, I think it's a great roadmap, right? So I appreciate the work on it and the honesty of your opinions and some of the opinions of people that went unnamed, of course. And I ultimately would just like to see, what the administration then, comes up with where to start, which one's the, where do we want to go from there? So again, thank you.
Thank you.
Katie?
Yes, thank you both for being here. Thank you for all the time that you've spent with the district too, and I really appreciate, I'm sure that you do this with everybody, but the full 360 review with people all up and down throughout the district, including CPAC. I think it's really important to include really the customers of our school system.
Yeah.
Bill, I think you said it earlier that when people try to implement these changes too fast, they fail every time. And then you kind of reiterated that, where it really takes years to make that habit consistent and to create that change and create that new habit. So I understand that a lot of this may take some time, and I think I appreciate all of your commentary around this because it kind of helped us frame this. We are not in education, so it helps when you give a little bit of that commentary back rather than just reading off these slides. And I guess just my comment is I'll be interested to see, because I know, Brenda, you had talked about that a lot of this is already things that we're implementing in the district. So it would be helpful for us to say where these recommendations are coming from and where we are already implementing, and what are the additional things that we're going to take out of these recommendations.
And what will our indicators of success look like? That's,
That's really
again,
key.
key here, because, again, just developing that DCAP, check.
Yep.
Now, do we have indicators of success that it's being used? So I'll just give that as an example.
Yeah, and I think that was great that you brought that up, because it sounds like, yes, we have this great robust process, however, it hasn't been implemented and trained
Right.
throughout the district, so that we're not even using some of these great tools that we're implementing.
Right.
So, okay, that's all my comment is, now we need to take it that next step and say, okay, what are how are we taking these recommendations and building them into our goals and our visions?
Correct.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you. I'll share the same sentiment as my colleagues. I guess just a couple things from my standpoint. So there's a lot of recommendations. I'm sure the administration already has most of them completed at this point. Is there anything of these 11 findings that you would consider as urgent, and if so, why?
We consider the regular ed interventions and supports urgent.
Okay.
So, very simply, I'm going to take this from 2 points of view. First of all, kids. I've always operated on the philosophy that every child should get what he or she needs without having to wait to go through a process. Okay? I shouldn't wait for a student to go through a 45-day evaluation process or wait to have a 504 meeting. I should be able to say, oh, Johnny needs this, I have the ability to deliver it, or the district has the ability to deliver it, let's get this started, so, because kids can't afford to lose time. That's the primary piece. The secondary piece, quite honestly, is financial. I'm even leaving the legal out of this, financial. Special ed and 504s are legal obligations, federal and state obligations. The more you have to spend there, you know the rest of your pie shrinks. Okay?
Yep.
Brenda shared with us today, they have how many more out of districts?
8 more from the number in our report.
From when we started, okay? Where are you getting that money from? Okay? You have to do a better job before kids get to that point. All right? And that's not denying kids service if you have services in place they can have without being referred to special ed or becoming 504.
Okay.
Yeah, I would totally agree with Cindy. I would add 2. One is that process around paraprofessionals. And by the way, my sort of criteria for answering your question is that I think they can be dealt with quickly, and I think they need to be dealt with quickly. I think that's one, that defining that process, making sure people understand it, making sure that all the people in the right decision-making roles live that process when principals call them or someone else calls them looking to do a workaround, to me would be one. The second one would be that issue of tight coupling and defined autonomy, which can start the next time these people meet with principals, because that's a conversation around that work and trying to, the principals I worked with in Brookline, particularly the last 5 years, would tell you that was the best professional learning that they've ever been involved in. I know because I've talked to some of them recently who've said that work of really talking about their role, my role, everyone's role, and how we all fit together and what they had control over in their building and what that control that they had in their building looked like, really changes the dynamics of sort of what, autonomy and all those kinds of things really mean.
Right.
And so that would be very, very high up on those. But I totally agree with the things Cindy added to this as well.
And that's when you hear us talk Chair One.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, in terms of like any sort of systematic issues or gaps that maybe you uncovered and identified, is there anything there that you think that is contributing to sort of where we are today that we need to sort of course correct?
Yeah, 100%. What I just, I chose that second one because of what you just, yes, I believe that the lack of through lines, I think Cindy agrees with me, the lack of those through lines, the inconsistency of practice across those different transition points, the lack of understanding on the parts of parents of what lies ahead for my child is contributing to that out-of-district number. I believe it. I've lived that. Yes, I believe that. And to the increased numbers of yes, all of that.
So-
those things go together.
I think we said it, and if we haven't, I'll say it now. And you're all parents. Your job is to take care of your kid. And you're going to find a way to do that. And if the district is not providing the services and supports your child needs, you're going to seek the path.
You'll find it.
All right? And that path may cost the district money, but quite honestly, the parent will say to you, not my problem. My problem is to take care of my kid. So that is where you're having your primary issue.
Okay. And then just lastly, from my standpoint, as a school committee, I mean, from your perspective in terms of how you've dealt with other districts that you've worked with, I mean, how often should we revisit these findings to monitor progress with the administration? Because obviously, we're not going to revisit this every month, but I think from our perspective, it's helpful to just maybe hear how you interact with other school committees, maybe in the districts that you've worked with, in terms of how they should evaluate that progress. Because like you said, this is a multi-year process, as you've mentioned several times now.
I don't know what your structure looks like for looking at monitoring, for example, indicators of success around a strategic plan or other initiatives. I've seen that done quarterly. I've seen it done twice. I think the key is that everyone understands that it's a regular part of your conversations. And regular can be defined in lots of different ways, right? Whatever's comfortable for you, right? Whatever continues to hold people accountable for that and keeps a conversation going and says, this is really important, right? That could be quarterly, that could be twice a year, it can be whatever, however you define that and however you're used to doing business.
So,
If I can as well, trust me, we're monitoring that monthly with our administrators, and we've been thinking about that. What are indicators of success? Because you're right, this isn't something we're going to keep pouring in the evidence here,
Right.
although there'll be those times in the year.
Sure.
How do we invite you to see those systems that we're, or processes we're having with our district leadership team?
Right.
Because it is a process.
Right.
It's not going to just hand deliver a data table, so to
Right,
speak.
'cause
But how do you observe
Right.
that evidence of doing this work with us?
Right.
I think is something we're trying to think through with that group, because you would have been very pleased to see that work today.
Right, sure.
And it was ironic, and that I guess it isn't ironic, we certainly planned out today, and Candace and Dave can talk about that, but I wish you could have seen some of the work that they were already contributing to towards this. And it is incremental.
Yeah.
And it is a process, but it would be good to evidence that with you, so you can clearly see this isn't falling on deaf ears, and we're holding people accountable. Very high-quality administrators being held accountable and seeing the urgency in this.
And if I might, and yes to all that, and you know that you play also another role, right? You're the eyes and ears of the community.
Yeah.
So having it as part of agendas says something to the people who you serve as well, right? So yes, to seeing how all of that works, to being part of that, to seeing those conversations, to hearing from people, to seeing some of that in operation. But keeping it on agendas, making sure that those are regular conversations does send a message to the people who live in this community that we are really interested in this and we're paying attention to it, and it's not going away.
And I'm also thinking too, like for my colleagues up here that visit our CPAC meetings every month,
Yeah.
it's one thing to know that this is being done, but it's another thing to feel
Yeah,
that this is being
that's
done.
right.
Right? And so I'm just thinking about how we can take some of those, not only those findings, but those, as you pointed out, Brenda, those, how we're measuring the successes, and then bring that information forth in a meaningful way, to your point, through an agenda, through whatever, in a timely manner, so that, again, it's, you know, it's like the conversation about the economy, right? Like, everyone kept saying, oh, the economy's great, but no one was feeling it, right? Like, we can say that this is great, it's working, but if you're not feeling it, it's
That's
not
right.
working. Anyway, so.
I mean, I'll just say that so we did a lot of things that I won't bore you with. I've talked about some of them that we did in Brookline and where I worked. But one of the things that we implemented for most of the time that I was there was some sort of a parent, I think we called it a parent satisfaction survey, right, that we did regularly. Many of those years when the relationship was great, we did it in conjunction with CPAC. There were a couple of years there that I won't talk about. But for most of the time, we did it in collaboration with them, because our point up front was we had a number of kids out of district, too high a number. We believed we could build programming in district. We believed we could get better handle and provide better service with those team chairs. So our mantra was always, reduce those numbers and improve services, right? And so that became our indicator of success. So how are we going to measure that? Well, one of the ways was with that survey that we did in conjunction with them. So
But I would-
yes to everything you said.
But I would, if you remember on the first slide, we said take a deep dive into your data.
Yes.
And create a baseline.
Yes.
Okay? And then you revisit your data again. Where are we in response to our baseline? Have our number of referrals gone down? Have our number of out-of-district students gone down? Have our number, even on your MTSS, how many kids are in MTSS?
Yeah.
How many kids have gone successfully through MTSS?
Right.
I'm a data geek. I like to see those numbers, and then I can deep dive into it.
Right.
It's uncomfortable for staff, quite honestly, similarly to MCAS data that you can deep dive into. Why is, the third grade not doing X, Y, and Z?
Great, thank you.
Great.
Thank you. Again, 8 weeks of work is a lot here to digest, and I think a lot for the district to digest. I appreciate you just mentioning again the in-depth data analysis. I think that's something I would like to see as well. Some of where the crossovers lie, where can programs come back in, where can our paras, our aides, strengthen their skill sets. I think that in-depth analysis of the data of these students, looking at what they need and looking at what we have, I think will help us quite a bit. I do want to also call out that you did point out at the very beginning that we are doing a lot of things great. We are doing things well here already. We have a lot of things in place and in the works already. Was there anything that you saw across the data that you pulled that was abnormal or not consistent across some of the other districts that you worked with, aside from maybe the transitions? Because I know Tewksbury is obviously very different with how many transitions we have. But your number of findings, is that a consistent find across?
Everybody is in a similar place post-COVID. The two issues that we're seeing mostly are behavior. And to some degree, kids don't know how to do school anymore. But the reading issue is a huge challenge, and we talked about this with your various principals and with other central office administrators. And, you talk about going for a quick win, it's not a cheap win, would be intensifying your reading interventions, especially at the upper elementary and middle school level. Those are the kids who missed out, 21, 20, 21, 21, 22, 22, 23. They're now in those grades. And as the reading demands have become more complex, many of them don't have the foundational skills to progress at an appropriate rate. So that is something we have found. And that's not just in this district. I will tell you, in almost every district we have met with, that has been an issue. And part of that issue has been if kids do not continue to make sufficient progress, again, what is the next step for them? How do you support them as they go forward?
If I may, Cindy and Bill, when they presented to our administrators, and I don't know if I would call this abnormal, but maybe even possibly a symptom of what Cindy and Bill are talking about, we have a very high number of paras. So applying restrictive supports isn't necessarily giving us the improvement we're looking for either. So we do, that recommendation, as Bill said, is something to look at.
And like restructuring what they're doing to use them for
Roles,
something like-
responsibilities, how paras are put on,
Right.
children, and what does that look like and why? So I think not abnormal, but applying many, many, many extra restrictive supports isn't the answer either. More isn't getting us more.
Right. The area I would cite, and remember, we use transition in two different ways, right? And I'm not talking now about the transitions between schools, but I thought of your question as, what do I remember writing into this report that I haven't necessarily thought about in other districts that we've done? And it's the area of transition planning, which I think we heard enough about to suggest that there's a concern, that there should be a concern, and that there's a need for some work in that area to make sure that kids and parents, starting at age, it's 14, right? Yes, so I should remember that. I'll be teaching that class in 3 weeks. That there's a robust process to begin those discussions at age 14, so that those kinds of plans are being developed for kids and families. I think I've not heard that in the other 6 or 7 of these that we've done as such an area of concern.
Okay. And I think it is something that I do attend the CPAC meetings, and I think that is something that's come up in our CPAC meetings in terms of what they can do, even from their perspective, whether it's a mentor program to kind of get the parents prepared so that they know that they're supposed to be asking for some of these things as well, because they don't seem to even be aware of that, to help prepare those kids that are coming of that age to take the next step of whatever it might be. And then, so, well, let me see here, because I have them all over the place. I was trying to cross things off as everybody was going. The evaluation process was another one. It was timely because we just talked about it, I think, with MCAS at our last meeting. So I would like to see, where the district goes with that evaluation process and looking for consistency there as well. When I read through the 11 findings, I think that something that I took out from every single one was inconsistency, transitions, communication. It was a theme in all of them. It's not the main theme of every single one, but it did come up. So that's just something that I noted here. And then you just talked a minute about how kids can't afford to let kids, lose time, even though some of these things will take quite a bit of time to implement. There are still kids that are in school right now that need the attention.
Yes.
So I do look forward to seeing what the district is going to do with the findings to, obviously plan for these kids in the future, but also make sure that the ones that are here right now are getting what they need and continue to receive what they need going forward. So, thank you so much for all the work.
Thank you.
And then to just follow up, again, thank you so much. And if you could take back to the district leadership team and anybody else that participated, the special ed department, thank them all profusely on behalf of the committee, because this couldn't happen without the honesty and the openness. Honestly, I'm really so thrilled that the district took these steps, because I think just having an outside perspective, I think, is just invaluable. So, and, your experience is everything, so thank you.
Thank you.
Some of the things that crossed my mind in reading your report and in listening to you today, when you talked about case managers being evaluators, do you mean of students or
No.
Of teachers.
Teachers.
as well?
So they're essentially, you have Unit B?
We
Yeah.
do.
So they would essentially, the recommendation is essentially so that they can evaluate educators. It helps reduce the load on your principals and other people who
Okay.
observe.
That
But
makes
it-
more sense, okay.
Yeah,
I was
no,
thinking
so
of
it's
students and it wasn't like-
it's an educator evaluation role is possible when they hold those positions.
The other thing that we talk about, and we've talked about this in other reports, is when your case managers are in the same unit as your teachers,
Yeah.
it becomes very difficult at team meetings that they're chairing to hold other people accountable,
Right.
or, because it's basically peer against peer. Where if they're Unit B and they're an evaluator and a supervisor, they have a right under the contract to say, I expect this, or let's have a conversation about what you did. It changes that dynamic.
Yeah, a great example of that, we've worked with other districts that where they're also Unit A, just like the other educators are, and some of those interviews have been, I ask for a report to be to me by a particular day, right? I don't get it from people, right? And then that's another one of sort of the side pieces of not having that role, is not necessarily being able to get the materials you need, get the cooperation you need from those other members of the team. The unit, I wish it didn't, but the Unit B role changes the dynamics of that conversation.
Okay. I can also say, in reading through this, I said to myself many times, you got the district. You know this district. Hands down, you know this district. Things like the overlapping, or having case management overlap, having
Yeah.
different roles overlap, and how invaluable that would be. I think of it from a family's perspective, because I'm always looking through that lens. I'm not an educator. I'm not, that's not where I sit. And how much that would mean to families, knowing that, just that taking the air out of the balloon a little bit, and that pressure release, in knowing that they're going to go from the Ryan to the Win and not feel that level of anxiety or angst or pressure, could be so meaningful to so many families. So to just even have one person in that team with them that just knew their child the year before so well. So I think, when I hear those things, it sounds like such a simple fix. Maybe that's a massive cultural change for the district, and that would have to be, something huge if that were to be implemented. So, but when I read it, it just feels like such a big thing, but the practical application, like you say, could be massive.
It shouldn't be terribly massive. Maybe it is, maybe it's more than I'm thinking, but the fact that they split time between buildings now, says that piece is already achieved.
Right.
Right? They already split time between buildings, so I don't have to convince people that you're going to go between two buildings. Right, it's just not, you're not going to be K to 2 and 4 to 5 anymore. It's going to be a contiguous grade, right, which is what achieves the advantages that you just talked about. And I want to say, because I don't want to be construed as coming down sort of hard on your grade level model, right? This is one of the advantages. You can do that. That's harder to do in the K to 8 and 9 to 12 buildings that I worked in, or even the traditional K to 5, 6 to 8. It's harder to have someone, when you go to that first meeting at 6th grade, I've had this experience, when you go to that first meeting at 6th grade, they're all new people.
Right.
Right? And if you can do things about that, and you have more of an opportunity to do that because of your smaller grade configurations within your buildings, you have more of an opportunity to do something I couldn't do in Beverly and I couldn't do in Brooklyn.
So, Bridget, I just want to say to you, if we got your district, it was because your people were honest with us.
Yes.
When we said to them, please tell us whatever you need to tell us, there's no names, whatever, they were great. They really, we never walked away saying that there's something they're holding back.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So no, that was, yeah, there was some good things there. The other, PD, I've kind of had some side conversations in the past. Is there any, I don't even know how we would fit another minute of time for people to not be with kids, but is there any sort of self-directed professional development or other alternative ways? I mean, have you talked offline about this at all in terms of,
Well,
Well, we,
creative ways of,
there's lots of creative ways.
okay.
All right, and I'm sure Nancy knows many of them.
Okay.
But again, it's getting buy-in. So a lot of districts do book studies. A lot of districts do peer observation or walkthroughs, and then give feedback or comment on what they saw. A lot of districts do on a faculty day, they do 20 minutes of best practice. Somebody gets up and shares best practice. If somebody's willing to have their class filmed, all right, and you throw it up on the secure portal for the teachers. If you want to see a great math lesson with accommodations, here's Mrs. Jones, this was outstanding. People like to show off. They like to receive praise. There's lots of ways around it. People just have to buy in.
we used to get a smaller number of subs for example, for a grade level within a building, and then do something with, let's say, the fourth grade teachers, with one of them doing some sort of model lesson and the others observing, and then having a little bit of time. The thing we could do with that model is if we got sub, we might be able to do 2 or 3 grade levels in a day that way, right? We changed, and when I was in New Hampshire, we really changed and a lot of districts have already done this, right? I'm not saying you haven't, but we really changed the model of what a faculty meeting was. So it was much less about things I could send you in an email or things I could communicate to you in a different way, and it became an hour and a half, 2 hours, whatever the length of time is that I have, of professional development, often done by your colleagues around those high leverage practices. So it's really taking a look at the time you have and that you use for other things that, for whatever reason, you've thought were so valuable, and say, is that really more valuable than this? And the answer is often no. I should be using it around teaching and learning and getting that information to educators in other ways.
And the value of your model, because again, we don't want you to think that we're slamming your model. The value of your model is you have all those grades together.
Yeah, when you do something
It's not like you're trying to replicate it in 3 different buildings. You have all your second grades, all your third grades, all your fifth grades, whatever it may be, and there is, and I have found in my career, bottom-up change has been the most effective. I got a great new way to teach, theme. Oh, can I borrow it? That is probably one of the most impactful ways the teachers grow. And you have everybody in one place, so it's not like you're going to have more inconsistency. You have an opportunity to build consistency.
Right.
Okay, great. Then, I think that was the gist. Educator evaluator stuff. Do you have, and this is just picking your brain because you happen to be here, so I'm going to use you and take you for a minute. And you guys may have all had these conversations. But educator evaluator, I know we've looked at just in terms of we use the DESI rubric when we, do our annual review for the superintendent. But it also, there's different software, apps, we've talked about maybe utilizing something like that in the past, just so that there's some consistency. It makes it easier for us to just do the little job we have, which is a big job, but still, it's one person. But there's all these, do you know of anything like that would kind of make things more consistent
To
in terms
use
of
with your
evaluator?
educators, or were you talking about the superintendent evaluation?
Talking about the educator, where you're saying there's inconsistencies with.
Do you use Vector already?
Yes.
We use
You
TeachPoint,
use
and I will
TeachPoint.
give a little plug, because
Yeah.
we've used Rebus Associates in calibrating our principals. We call it SJE, they call it SJEIR.
Right.
the way that a recommendation, accommodation and recommendation is written. In fact, through Teach Point, we have a long rebus bank of how to write those things.
Sample
The
paragraphs,
key here is the consistency in practice from school to school to school.
Oh, so
Yes.
that's
And
what-
that is what we are calibrating within our leadership team again this year, because we want, and with a focus, high leverage areas, what are, and it's a process, but it is about consistency in making, we observed, and I'm not going to spend a lot of time on this, 2 amazing classrooms today as a small group. But we walked out and we had specific indicators we were looking at, language objectives and learning objectives and strategies for our language learners. And while we saw amazing lessons, if we didn't see exactly what we were looking for, we practiced what would that feedback look like. It has to be focused. And on the contrary, with one of the classes we saw probably 8 examples of what that would look like, and now the principal is going to not only give that feedback, but ask, can others observe that classroom? So it has to be calibrating the commendation, what they saw that was great, but here's what we were really looking for, and some feedback to get there, with maybe some recommendations of who you can work with that's doing that really well. It's not an I gotcha, but it is about expectations to supervision, to the feedback a teacher needs to make that next step. So I don't know if I helped with that, Bridget, but, we are working with the consultant that is good, for that, and our principals need to practice that a little bit
Yeah, I'd
more.
add 2 pieces to that. And one is that, with a number of districts I work with, regularly they bring an observation document to those meetings, and there's a protocol you can use to give one another feedback, and it's terrific, and it really does improve their writing and all those kinds of things. And the thing that I've found is always a key in this is when I'm doing, and I'll be doing one tomorrow, an observation with an administrator in Walpole. And the question I will ask over and over again is, you have this claim around a particular standard, what's your evidence? Right? And making sure that people are well-versed in talking about what they saw in the classroom that leads them to say, I think that this particular standard was met. Because it's not, it wasn't part of my training, and I still don't think it's a great part of the training that we all receive in these roles.
Great. No, all of it was great. A lot of feedback that I love to hear, things that we've been talking about right along. So I could probably talk to you another hour, but I won't. So thank you very much.
Thanks for having us.
Thank you. It was a pleasure.
Very much.
Stay warm.
All right. Yeah, great. Next, we have citizens forum. I have not seen anybody here. They can join us.
Madam Chair, just real quick. I know Rodney is not here, but just for a point of order, just.
Yep. Oh, yep, and point of order, Ronnie is not here to join us today. And Mrs. Therrett, did you have anything you wanted to add specifically? I just thought I'd offer. Just feel like
I
we
guess I
kept
would
you
just
here.
say that I do also appreciate the opportunity to have experienced the audit as someone that's new to the role and trying to learn all of the facets of the job. But I think everything that they came forward with are things that we've been continually discussing as a leadership group. And I'm really seeing it unfold just this school year even with some of the initiatives that we're trying to push forward. So I don't think it was surprising what they came forward with, but I'm really excited to have, a real true focus for our department and the district to move forward and to keep everybody up to date as we move along and prioritize some of these things. But I was excited about the work that was done and felt like it was a really positive for us to move forward in a good direction. So.
Great. Thank you so much for staying with us and being here for questions. And
Yeah, no problem.
And you're all set?
Thank you, Candace. You don't have to
Anything to add, Nancy?
manage the rest of it with us if you don't want.
You're staying longer? I will depart, I apologize. I have a little bit of a drive, so thank you for the opportunity to come tonight.
Yeah, no, I'm all set. I do think that reflecting upon your questions and some of the things that we've already identified, there are a few things that I want to keep in mind as we are creating this plan. We know our PD time is limited, so that is going to be one of the barriers when we're looking for training for consistency. So we can't take on everything at once. But there are definitely overlaps in a lot of this work. So as we are creating that plan, you know, Bill and Cindy talked about that 2 to 5 years, and I always say 3 to 5 years to get something going, 5 to 7 to sustain. So we really are looking at, to Mr. Russo's point about what can we talk about and how often should we talk about it, I think that that should be part of our indicators for success. What are the things that we think that we can provide ongoing information with, and then what are the areas that will take a little bit longer? So those are the things that was resonating with me when I was listening to your questions, as we've already sat down to start chipping away at this report, and what we can do now, and then how do we layer this for the next 3 to 5 years. So,
Again, thank you so much.
thank you.
Yep, and Ronnie is not here tonight. She had a track meet, I understand, so, and again, nobody's here with us for Citizens Forum. Approval of minutes, Mr. Marcotte?
Sure, I'll do this fast. We have one regular school committee meeting, so I motion to approve Wednesday, December 11th, 2024 minutes.
I'll second.
Okay, motion by Mr. Marcotte, second by Mrs. Anderson. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye, and that,
I'll abstain.
oh, okay, we have a 4 to 1 abstention with Mr. Russo, who's not here last meeting. And then we have a submission and payment of bills.
Sure. So for payroll period ending 12/19/2024, I move the school department payroll be approved and certified, and the amounts and categories are shown for a total amount of $1,674,580.08.
I'll second.
Okay, we have a motion by Mr. Moncada, a second by Mrs. Biagioni Smith to approve and certify the payroll period ending December 19th, 2024, in the amount of $1,674,580.08. Mr. Moncada, how do you vote?
Aye.
Mrs. Anderson?
Aye.
Mr. Russo?
Aye.
And Mrs. Biagioni Smith?
Aye.
And I vote aye as well, for a unanimous vote.
And we have one other, so for payroll period January 2nd, 2025, I move the school department payroll be approved and certified, in the amounts and categories as shown for a total amount of $1,620,468.17.
I'll second.
A motion by Mr. Moncada, second by Mrs. Biagioni Smith, to approve and certify the payroll period ending January 2nd, 2025, total amount of $1,620,468.17. Mr. Moncada, how do you vote?
Aye.
Mrs. Anderson?
Aye.
Mr. Russo?
Aye.
Mrs. Biagioni Smith?
Aye.
I vote aye as well, for unanimous vote. And then our superintendent staff report.
Okay.
Terry Regan.
I will try to abbreviate my updates as best I can. Just as a reminder, the MSBA, Massachusetts School Building Authority, is contracted with SDV to evaluate all of our Mass public school buildings. Next week, they'll be visiting all of our 6 schools, accompanied by our John Marshan and Brett Weiss, our maintenance foreman and assistant foreman. I just want to let you know there'll be no disruption to the school learning day for our staff and students. Tomorrow is the Valley Collaborative Annual Stakeholder Meeting. I know members of the committee, you have been invited and have RSVP'd whether or not you'll be able to go. It's always a good opportunity to hear the progress made at the Valley Collaborative for our students, and then the budgetary process for next school year for them. Dr. Alex Hirschberg, who is the consultant working with our district, in fact, on our MTSS and SST process, is in the district tomorrow. Our teams continue to grow under his consultancy, along with Ms. Baker O'Brien and Ms. Candace Tharrett's lead, identifying interventions, in fact, in that Tier 1 process. Opt-out update language to our student handbooks is in your packet. At our December school committee meeting, I shared our requirement in sharing some student and family data to certain entities and the need for that opt-out process for parents. You have the language that we are now inserting into all of our student handbooks. I think all of them have that language in there now digitally, and as promised, I bring to you any changes that are made to the handbook throughout the school year. Planning for next school year is a very busy time for us at the central office and in all our schools. Not only are interventions and action plans for student success kicking into action at our schools, we're very busy planning for our 2026 budget with all of our departments and school principals, as well as planning for next year's staffing and classroom needs based on projected enrollment and those student learning needs we just talked about. This is a very fluid process. You're a little bit more for Mr. Libby when it comes time for his turn and updates. With that, tomorrow, the Assistant Superintendent and I will be reviewing the Tewksbury Memorial High School Program of Studies with Principal Long and the Assistant Principal, Dr. Eileen Osborne. We're going to be looking at those ongoing staffing needs at the high school and courses that students will have to choose from for the 2026 school year. I expect to have that final program of studies for you at our February school committee meeting. On that note, I've also been talking with the WIN principal, Mr. Weir, and I've asked him to collaborate with our high school principal, Mr. Long, with Mrs. Baker O'Brien, and the respective guidance counselor teams. There's quite a bit of information in that program of studies, which can be very overwhelming to 8th grade parents trying to help their freshmen think about their high school career, or their 8th graders who will soon be freshmen. So the goal is that they can get clear information on that timeline, what those course selections look like for an incoming freshman student. I expect, Ms. Baker O'Brien's already working on that timeline with the WIN in the high school. I hope to have some more information. Typically, for anyone who's still watching, students choose courses for the next school year in March. So that process has not begun, although some guidance around that may have begun. We need to get some more information out to our 8th grade parents so they are understanding of what that looks like. So as I said, we're in full swing, not only doing this school year, but in planning for next. I'm sure you're going to hear much more from my colleagues here to the left, and especially as we enter into the information around the budget season. That concludes my reports for tonight.
Thank you. Any questions, comments?
No. Thank you.
Yeah, very concise, thank you. Mrs. Milligan?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I have 4 quick updates. The first one is about the competency determination. With the change in the high school competency determination in effect, the district is working with surrounding communities to create guidelines to inform needed changes in our CD and related policies. At this time, DESE has not provided any guidance, but we hope to have an update for you in February with some recommendations. So that is what we're working towards for a timeline. Register periods. Historically, the district has issued report cards for grade levels on semesters 2 weeks after grades close. Reflecting on this practice, our current turnaround time, and the systems in place, the district is able to issue a report card starting in term 2, 1 week after grades close. This will move the upcoming report card issue dates to February 5th and April 16th, respectively. For families, please note that parents can always check grades in Aspen at any time. This does not change the number of days in each term, but provides more timely feedback for families and for high school for colleges and admission decisions. You will find a memo and correspondences in your packet from Mr. Long, who reviewed the workflow and worked with the impacted buildings to create the final proposal. If you have any questions, I'd be more than happy to either speak to them or also pass them along to Mr. Long. January 16th is our World Language Cultural Fair at TMHS at 6 p.m. to 7:30 p.m. Our level 2, 3, and 4 students and our L students have put together this fair to learn about the different cultures and communities for all of our world languages. And finally, just a reminder about Beyond the Books, that we'll be offering families 4 sessions at our K-6 buildings to come in and learn more about the current literacy program, its design, and how it supports the science of reading research. The first session starts tomorrow at the Dewing School. Heathbrook is next Tuesday, January 14th. Ryan is Tuesday, January 28th. And CES is Thursday, January 30th. And that is all starting at 9:30 in the morning. All are welcome to attend. And that is all I have for today.
Okay, any questions or comments? And that was Dewing 114, Ryan 128.
CES 1:30, and Heathbrook is January 14th. Dewing is tomorrow.
Oh, Dewing's tomorrow.
Yes. Sorry. 9:30 to 10:30.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And I'll send you a message if I can make any of those.
Absolutely, thank you.
And I have no questions. Thank you.
Madam Chair, just one from my, so with regards to the report card stuff, I mean,
Register period, yep.
the registration periods, yeah, so do we have buy-in and all that with the union?
Pardon?
Do we have buy-in with all that with the union,
So
all the
it-
different buildings?
So it doesn't impact teaching or teachers at all.
Yeah.
All it does is, once teachers put in their grades, it used to take the district 2 weeks for principals
Okay.
and our central admin staff
It's
to
on the
turn around
administration
report
side
cards.
then.
So that, nothing changes on the teacher's end.
Perfect.
Yes.
Okay.
Thank
If
you
you,
for the
if you
question.
think about it, I mean, they would be, what's the word I want to use? The principal would look at all the report cards, but then the secretaries would stuff all the envelopes, and things go into the folder, and things go into the backpack, and that length of time is no longer needed.
Yeah.
So it's still, we've always given teachers, and this goes way back, a weekend and a week, or a week and a weekend. Okay, so 5 days plus that weekend. Why? Because if you close grades on Monday and they would do Friday, there could be, an impact there. So we're still giving teachers the same input time.
Okay.
We're turning that posting around quicker.
Understood.
And there's reasons that it is beneficial to our students, especially here at the high school.
Understood. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you for the question.
And Mr. Libby?
Thank you, Madam Chair. So we're down to crunch time on budget for FY26. We had our initial meeting with our new town manager, Mr. Curran, to start discussing where the town will be in terms of finances for next year and how that will relate to the school budget. We've met with just one school at this point, and a couple of our department heads in the central office to get their feedback on their needs for next year. We're scheduling meetings with the rest of our building principals next week, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, to finalize those numbers for the building level folks. And it'll be a back and forth now between us and the town to determine where our final number will land. We have a budget workshop scheduled for January 22nd at 4:30. Show up early, it's usually a big crowd, you want to get a good seat for that, and hopefully it'll be informative for folks, and we'll have some good information that we can share at that point. I stress continually through this, as my role here as business manager has evolved, that it's a never-ending process, this budget. Always evolving, the needs are changing, the resources are changing. So as we move through the spring into the May town meeting, I know things will change as we get closer to the town meeting, and we have an open process to let folks know this is where things have changed and our needs have changed and our resources have changed, and this is why we've made the decisions we made as we get closer to the town meeting. So I guess that's about it on budget. Our Heathbrook 5-classroom greenhouse room project, I emailed you some recent photos this evening from the area, some of them from inside the school. It's really shaping up. We are pretty well locked into a February move at this point. We did hit a snag with where the existing roof structure met the new window structure with making it watertight. We had to bring in our roofing folks to do some repairs there that were going to be cheaper for our people to do than the contractor, but we got those done last week, and they're watertight and sealed up now. So the rooms are looking good and in good shape, and we'll be ready for students to and staff to move in over February vacation. Yeah.
We were able to tour the town manager, Mr. Curran, through the Heathbrook and the Dewing as well over the December break.
Great. Any questions, comments for Mr. Libby?
A comment, I think watertight and sealed up at the Heathbrook, I think is very good.
Yeah.
I think that's the end goal.
Correct.
Yeah. I have no comments, other than just thank you very much. I think those teachers are probably really excited to get back to a home base.
Yes, I bumped into one at Market Basket, and she let me know she's ready to go.
Okay, thank you. And moving on, so it seems the correspondence and informational topics were pretty well covered, so we can move on. Handbook update, we're all set. Everybody, no questions, comments there. Registration periods and revisions, no issues there. Consent agenda, any other comments?
Nope.
Nothing, no issues?
Couple of appointments and,
Okay.
yep.
And that still requires a vote.
I'll make a motion to approve the consent agenda as presented in our packets this evening.
Second.
A motion by Mr. Russo, second by Mrs. B. Johnny Smith. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Motion passes unanimously. Our school committee member reports I'll start with CPAC. I'm not sure who attended or has the.
There hasn't been, it's next week.
Yeah, they didn't have a normal business meeting for December. Their next business meeting is January 16th, and they do have an event upcoming this weekend in collaboration with Tewksbury Public Library to watch the movie Out of My Mind, again, the 11th at 11 a.m. And just a reminder, if you are going to attend, plan to bring a snack, some blankets, some pillows.
And the one other thing is they currently have a poll up on their Facebook page for their next caregiver coffee session to try to pick the best day for that.
Okay, great. And Wellness Advisory Committee. That'll be Mrs. Anderson and Mr. Moncada.
No meeting until February.
Okay. And Policy Subcommittee, Mr. Russo?
To policy changes?
Yeah, we do have a date set, right?
Yeah, we do. Yep, January 24th.
January 24th. And Tewksbury School Facility Study Committee, did you want to?
Oh, sure, I could touch on that.
Yeah, the last meeting, you weren't here, we discussed adding that to the
Yeah, no, I
agenda.
saw in the minutes, that's
Sorry.
fine. So a couple things. Our tours are all set. We had the committee go to all 6 of the schools. We had one of our members create a tool to potentially plan for any reconfigurations to any of our buildings, but our principals, we've asked Brenda to go back to the principals to evaluate the need to have 8th grade at the high school and 3 grades at the Ryan or the Wynn, and what would be needed at those buildings to be able to accommodate that if that was the direction we were going to take this. It's an exercise. We'll see what they come back with, and so we'll have more to share in the coming meetings here. I think we all sort of agreed that a feasibility study is going to be potentially, hopefully, put as a warrant article at town meeting in May. So we'll work with our town manager on that. And I guess our next meeting next week will be really talking about some of the options, and there's been some things that have been discussed about that, and we'll start to evaluate some of those, and specifically the pros and cons of each of those over the coming meetings. That'll be our next focus.
Okay. Any questions from the committee? Anything else you wanted to add?
I expect the principals, we're meeting with them, I think it's Monday of next week, just to see the progress of this exercise and task that I've given them. And we expect to be able to present that at the meeting, I hope, barring any interruption in their regular day-to-day obvious work that we have them
Understood.
doing. But I think that they'll be all set.
Okay. Great. That brings us to the policy. We do have a couple to share.
Yep.
You
Want
wanna-
to go into it? Is that okay?
Yeah, jump right
So I guess we're going to recommend and take a vote tonight to rescind the following policy. We still had a policy on corporal punishment, JKA. For those still watching and staying up with us, that policy will be stricken with a vote here this evening. So I'll make a motion to rescind policy JKA.
Second.
There's no discussion? Okay. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Okay, that was unanimous.
Hope so.
And then this evening, we also had just policies for informational reading purposes, JICC and EEAEC, both relating to student conduct on school buses.
Okay. And if you notice, this is the same written policy, it just sits in two different places in the handbook. And it's mirrored how it's done as well with the MASC recommendations. So this is just informational purposes that tonight. This will come before the committee for 2 additional readings with consideration for a vote to approve at the second reading. So any questions or comments tonight?
Question, so if, is this part, of, like, at the beginning of the school year, we always have to sign off on the handbook, kind of that we reviewed it? Is this in there, like the bus policy, like, or a bus policy?
I would need to look. I doubt the whole policy is in the
Sure.
handbook, but I'm sure the reference to conduct expected on school transportation, which is really where this is going, is referenced for sure.
Okay.
Yep.
Just another quick question. Are we currently using video cameras on buses, and we're going to take that away?
The bus company has,
Oh, so that's why we're taking it out of this policy,
Yeah.
because that's on them?
We're
to
not,
do?
yeah, we're not.
Yeah,
physically
yeah.
using
Okay.
and let me go back to your question too, Mr. Moncada, that I know in the handbooks, the reference also is that the bus stop and school transportation are extensions of the code of conduct for school. Okay, so that would be another way in which it's referenced.
Yeah, okay, I mean, it's like, it's one of these things that, stuff happens on the buses all the time.
Yep.
Right, you know, when we have something to fall back on,
Yes.
and you signed off on this, and,
Yes.
okay.
Sorry, just another quick question. This says transportation to and from school. Should it also include, like, transportation to and from events, like sporting events, if they're going to and from a game?
So to answer your first question, the reason that was taken out of that policy is we actually have a whole policy on the use of video cameras on school buses.
Okay.
So EEAEF is a comprehensive policy on video cameras on school buses, and that covers all sorts of video camera-related concerns and issues. So that's why that's plucked out of there.
Okay.
And then the second one
And I
was...
think I answered my own question, because it's to and from school, so it doesn't matter if they're going home, if they're going to a game, it's...
Or a school event.
Yeah, okay, all right, so I'm good.
And I think that's why we also said other school transportation, right?
Yeah, later in the paragraph, yeah.
And including vans, for example.
This is always so clear when we talk about it, but then
Yes.
when we revisit it, it takes a second. Okay, so that's moving past that, no action there. Old business, some enrollment.
Actually, I'm sharing with you the January 2nd, 2025 enrollment. The total has not changed. While there's been fluctuations, add 4, minus 4, add 2, minus 2, add 1, minus 1. The total is still 3,235 students in the district as of January 2nd, 2025. So informational only, no vote is needed here.
Okay. All right, great. And the school calendar draft, well, we took out of order our 18A and 18B, so those have been done. School calendar draft, so my understanding is next month we can expect to see that
Yeah,
bill?
again, this is just a preliminary draft. We do this every year. No vote is needed tonight. This is informational only. I would only say this, for anybody who is watching and for you, Madam Chair, members of the committee, it's the blue K through 4 early release days that we're still working on. So you're seeing this first tonight. Our principals actually saw it this morning and have made some recommendations. Tomorrow, we will present this at JLM and get some further feedback from our teachers unit. But we expect to have I call it the final draft, but it's the first real draft for vote at the February school committee meeting, so that parents can plan. If any, again, parents are watching, the blackout days where school is not in session, the early release yellow days, and predominantly the green colored days are pretty etched in stone. Once you approve this calendar, it's really those other early release K through 4 days we need to think through a little more clearly. So there's one extra on here, because a recommendation was made, should we have that first K through 4 early release day on the second full day in August versus in May? Would that be more advantageous for teachers' preparation for their students, which is what that K through 4 day is for? So we're going to have that discussion tomorrow with our teachers' union leads.
Okay, great, okay, well, stay tuned.
I have a real quick question. Just on that day, you think that would impact attendance at all if you're only in school for a day and a half? Like,
It might.
incentive to-
It may, and it is only for, remember, K4, so 5 through 12 would still participate in trying out their schedule, meeting with their team, going to specials. It would really be a K4 prep piece. Those are all,
Yeah, just out of
and
curiosity.
this is our first year, so how this year plays out versus next year, we're going to live it and see what the pros and cons are.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay, and so new matters of interest for school committee. Anybody have anything you'd like to chime in with matters of interest?
I don't have any at this time.
No? No. Okay. The only thing I'd like to throw in is the next month, you can expect that we will be unrolling or at least putting out some applications for the Ginsburg and the Palomino Awards. The Ginsburg Award is a award looking for nominations for any individuals, companies, or groups that have had a significant impact on the Tewksbury Public Schools, whether financial, volunteering, or tangible contributions. And then the Palomino Award is for outstanding educator. So we would really, really like to see some applications there, because we know we got a lot of people that are well-deserving of those awards. So, keep your eyes peeled for that. You thought of something?
Yes. No, listen, the date of our next listening session.
January 14th at 5:30 PM, right in this room.
Awesome. Okay. That was it.
Yeah, perfect.
Shout out of that.
That's a good one. Okay, future school committee meeting dates. Wait, I think I had something else too that I wanted to add that I didn't mention earlier. No, I'll think of it. We have a brief mid-year check-in, the review of the district, and so the district superintendent and school committee goals, and that'll just be, I think, 30 minutes, just a brief check-in before we go right into Mr. Libby's budget. So maybe we'll open that to open session, close that, and then go into budget review. And then public budget hearing and regular business meeting on February 5th. Budget hearing and regular business meeting March 11th. Future subcommittee and advisory committee dates, CPAC business meeting January 16th, Wellness Advisory Committee meeting February 12th, Policy Subcommittee meeting is TBD, which we have, no, actually, that Friday, the 24th, and Tewksbury School Facility Study Committee meeting is on January 15th. Future agenda items, the only thing I could think of, we have invited the Lions Club after we had beautiful thank you note that we saw recently. The Lions Club had expressed some interest to actually come in and chat a little bit about the camp that they send the students to, and, possibly invite, the lead, our lead nurse, Kelly Constantino, or anybody else who would
Right.
think, to come in for that as well. And then, just to kind of circle back a little on the goals, I think, not all districts, I think, do much in terms of looking at goals. Knowing how much work you guys are doing at the district level, I think it's important that we highlight that and we do acknowledge a lot of that work. I think what we heard today from the special education team and with this audit, in recognizing how much the goal setting that happens in August really does drive the direction of the district, and I've seen a lot of changes since the goal setting and the consistency has been there through the district. I really appreciate the fact that we do this, that take the time to do it. I think it's more than just an exercise in Tewksbury, so, I can see that the educators are doing it, the administrators are doing it, and it's happening across the board at the upper levels too. So I look forward to hearing a little bit about that next month, or 2 weeks from now, whatever.
Yeah.
So that's it. Anything else to add? All right,
Motion to adjourn?
okay.
Oh, second.
All right. All in favor, please say aye. Aye. Okay, 9:05.